April 17th, 1975. After years of war, the Khmer Rouge entered Phnom Penh. Within 24 hours, they emptied the city of 2 million people and declared year zero, back to a totally agrarian, socialist society. In the next 3 years, somewhere between 1.7 and 2 million people died, mainly from starvation and disease. But many were executed, often simply for being educated. It was genocide. This project is about Cambodian people that we know who survived that terrible time, and whose response was to put their entire life into teaching and education, the same education denied by the Khmer Rouge. I have been a photographer most of my life, and still have all of my negatives and slides going back to my teenage years. And like many other photographers, I have tried lots of different genres. Travel photography has been a mainstay. I have been lucky to work and travel all over the world. In a current project called 75 Countries, I am going through the archive to see what stories there are to retell. I can see that to varying degrees. I've always tried to understand the people that we have encountered. I am inspired by the greats like Robert Frank and Walker Evans. Frank said, "Above all, life for a photographer cannot be a matter of indifference," and I feel the same way. I feel my photography should have a purpose stronger than it has to date. More recently, I find myself drawn to the work of Hiroji Kubota, a Japanese-American magnum photographer. His imagery of China and North Korea from 1979 onwards exemplify a useful crossover between travel, documentary, and journalism. Kubota said, "I think everybody has a great drama to talk about. Everybody." And he's right. Throughout my photographic practice, I've always been interested in colour. That's perhaps because I used to paint. I am especially intrigued by the work of Saul Leiter and Alex Webb. They use colour differently, with abstraction on one hand and layers of action on the other. Webb is a master storyteller and a master of timing. Leiter, a master of light. As I develop my own practice, I want to go beyond how I currently see and use colour to develop more of a signature style. When travelling, it always seemed quite easy to make a connect with people and take their photograph. Sometimes this allowed me to do fun street portraits, and sometimes something more important. This includes my work on the sugar daddy culture in East Africa and the HIV/AIDS epidemic. For me, colour, light, and being able to move from the whole scene to the specific individuals in it are key. People are central to how I want my photography to continue to develop. As I have begun to more formally understand my practice, I realize that storytelling, however peripheral, has always been part of how I have tried to shoot, looking for context, cultural and social clues. I thus found Liz Wells' book, Photography, really helpful in distinguishing critical elements of an image, cultural, political, and documentary context. And I find David Campany's exploration of the development of photography really interesting, especially the idea of traces and the creative use of archives. I am very drawn to Wolfgang Tillmann's eclectic approach, using varying imagery and styles to fully tell the story he wants to tell. So let me turn to the project. We first visited Cambodia in 1994. Unbeknownst to us at that time, part of the country was still under Khmer Rouge control, 15 years after Vietnam invaded Cambodia and stopped the genocide. At the time, I was a tourist, though I did visit Tuol Sleng, the S-21 interrogation center, and Chung Ek, the killing fields. Subsequently, Ingrid and I developed an interest in all things Cambodian. In 1999, after Pol Pot's death, we were able to fund a reasonably significant primary school building program in Khmer Rouge areas. We did this in partnership with Save the Children Norway and the Provincial Education Office of Siem Reap. We went back many times, and I documented things in words and pictures. Ingrid and I got to know many of the actors, including some ex-Khmer Rouge. We were also able to broker 2 major grants from Japan to really expand the program. This MA has already shown me that I need to do much more than I did at the time, photographically. I did not do full justice to the people and how those years have affected both their personal lives and Cambodian society as a whole. Even today, despite the best efforts of NGOs, the UN, and various government departments, education is not what it needs to be in Cambodia. The central character in this story is a man named Keo Sarath. He, his mother, and his sister, and his wife all survived the Khmer Rouge by hiding and living in the jungle. But 50 of his family died, including his father. When we first met him in 1999, he worked to save the children. Sarath has dedicated his life to children's education, and despite his most difficult personal history, he's always cheerful, with stories to regale about everything to anyone who will listen. He's irrepressible. Recently, I was with Sarath and his family in Cambodia. We visited Tuol Sleng, where over 16,000 people were interrogated, forced to write confessions, and then were executed. But this time, I had a better glimpse into how Sarath viewed it all. Part of the project is to ask the family to take photographs, with no direction from me. As Sarath photographed, he was more taken with the images, the mugshots on the walls of those executed, and the pictures showing children labouring in the fields. He said that the eyes showed no hope, and he often sees that lack of hope, even today, in school children's eyes. And he saw himself in the pictures of the child labourers. His wife, Vanna, who was a student at the school before Tuol Sleng became a house of death, stood in her old classroom on the second floor. It's now full of tiny cells for the women prisoners. She told me later that she was reflecting on her lost education. At Chongek, the killing fields, visitors were mainly foreigners. Yet this time, it was very personal. Sarath described his feelings standing by the Tower of Skulls. We were looking at the terrible wires that bound prisoners before they were executed. He described those bandings as a symbol that even today tie up the minds of the Cambodian people, holding them back. Yet at both Tuol Sleng and Chongek, Sarath's natural gift for education shone through. We talked to Cambodian school kids, explaining the history, and we talked with tourists, helping put more context into what they were seeing. So, what will be in this project? First, I need to understand the impact of history better and visit in more depth the archive groups like the Bopana Audiovisual Centre and DC Cam in Phnom Penh. The project will certainly challenge my research and probably political skills. Second, I will need to retrace steps we took with Sarath and the others involved in the heart of the countryside. Thirdly, I need to see what is going on in education today, including what Sarath is now doing. He's just left Save the Children, a long story, and is now with the Ministry of Education, in charge of national educational implementation. There are many ways this project could go. At root, it's about the Khmer Rouge times and how that's impacted education today. It could therefore be a largely biographical piece about Sarath and his family, or it could be a more general documentary about education and the still pervasive impact of the Khmer Rouge genocide. The project will challenge my documentary photography, my landscape photography, and my portrait photography. It will also be a challenge to my research and archival techniques. I'm very excited that this MA program will help grow all of these skills. And to bring it alive, I'm experimenting with video for the very first time. The endpoint seems pretty clear. I want to stage an exhibition in Phnom Penh, accompanied by a book, and then take it to whoever else will have it. I'm not a journalist, and probably shouldn't be to pull this off in today's Cambodia. But I do think I understand people. I'm very excited about this project, though I realise it will be hugely demanding of my time and, frankly, resources. The most important thing is that Sarath and his family are also really excited about it. I thus see this now not just as a project, but as a responsibility. Thank you for listening.